24681, 24682, 24683. $300. That is the price difference between these two devices. This, the UniFi Cloud Gateway Fiber, $279, and this, the new UniFi Cloud Gateway Industrial. This rocking out at around $579 right now. That is a big chunk of change difference between these two devices. So much so, it's worth highlighting that if you buy this device here, you can get this and take that money and grab yourself an extra switch, a wireless AP, adding on a camera as well. There is some money to be made there, and you can buy 3 devices like that, add it onto this for less than $300 and still have money for the cab ride home. So the question is, the UniFi Cloud Gateway Industrial, what is it, and what on earth makes it command that extra price tag? Now, UniFi has supplied this device. They're not paying for this review. It's not sponsored. They have provided it. These are my words. But the review is taking longer than expected. I got this about a week ago, and I'm trying to deep dive it, particularly some of the more rugged elements of this. So the review is going to take longer. This video is about the 4 reasons why this seemingly wants to command $300 more than the fiber model there. In fact, I'm going to get that off the table because I feel like a weapons grade. But before we go on to what is different, let's go on to what's the same, because regardless of which one of these two you buy, you are getting a full, complementary, comprehensive network management suite of applications and services from UniFi in that network software. Same thing with both of them, supporting up to well in excess of 500 devices. That is network management, multi-site management, and on top of that, things like the Protect surveillance software that is included for first-party and third-party cameras. Alongside that, you can take advantage of SD-WAN functionality, VoIP functionality, and more, all built into that software with a myriad of applications. Both of these arrive with that. Now, on a hardware level, they are indeed very, very similar. Both rocking out with the same CPU, that quad-core ARM-based processor, quad-core ARM Cortex A53 at 2.2 gigahertz per core, alongside 3 gig of memory to keep the wheels turning. Now, on top of that, they both arrive with very, very, very similar network connectivity, both arriving with both copper and fiber-based connections there at 2.5 gig and 10 gig. Indeed, this device here rocking out with PoE on this side of the table. Well, that is one of the main distinctions we'll talk about later on. They also provide you with the ability to include storage on these devices, predominantly being utilized for the Protect surveillance software, but can be used by other features and functionality. Ultimately, between these two devices, you are getting quite a powerful tool. But let's talk about what that 300 nicker actually gets you. Volumetrically, this thing is effectively double that of the fiber. And because of the material difference and that size, weight-wise, this thing rocks out at 675 grams. This, on the other hand, is 2.4 kilos. This is not portable. This is designed to stay put. And although it's an optional extra, I'm going to give them credit for this Rackmount deployment kit. I kind of wish it was included, but still, it's nice to have that option to be able to so easily deploy this in a rack mount scenario, regardless of the industrial nature of it. And also, this really nice tray that factors in that giant PSU, and we'll get onto PoE delivery in a bit. But I quite like this whole deployment method, but it's not included in that 300 SOV, so we can't really count it here. As mentioned, the review is still very much in progress, but early temperature indications on this kind of bear fruit on the whole industrial thing. I had this being constantly hit for both an hour and a 24-hour period. I also had a 2-bay NAS solution, a Wi-Fi 7 AP, a network switch, a 10G network switch over PoE, and a camera all attached to the PoE connections on this. Again, more on that later on, just to get some good idea of the thermals on that 1 and 24 hour. Over the course of the first hour, that was when it was at its hottest. It included the boot up there of around 44 to 45 degrees, pretty much all the way around it. That wasn't within a rack mount deployment. That was just in a simple ambient room. Now, after 24 hours, that number actually went down, not up. It stayed at around 41 to 43 degrees. Obviously, the surface it was attached to, because this is one giant aluminium heatsink, that played its little part underneath, but still, 41 to 43 degrees over a 24-hour period, with it getting hit pretty much constantly by all the connected devices and the network. Really, really impressed with that. PoE, Power over Ethernet. I've danced around it, let's actually get into it, because it actually is one of the main reasons why this device over here, the Industrial, commands the price tag it does. But if we go back to the fiber just very briefly, last year when I deep dove this device in a couple of videos, one of the things I touched on here is the fact that it was a network gateway. I also said it wasn't a router, and everyone got really angry at me, and you were right to be angry. But on top of that, I said one of the good points about it is that it had PoE coming out of it. This compact 279 device also had PoE. Now this dials it not up to 11, it dials it up to about 50, because this device has not only multiple PoEs, but PoE Plus and PoE Plus Plus Plus. Ultimately, the highest end of PoE you can get in at least a desktop form currently. Now to put that into perspective, this device's PoE is PoE Plus. It has a power budget that can be allocated to that port of 30 watts. That's pretty good. You can power camera devices and APs. Doesn't really go much beyond that. There are a few household devices, VoIPs and stuff you can do, but you can run stuff from it, but a single PoE there, that's not much compared to this. This has 2 PoE Plus ports, but it also has 3 PoE Plus 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 ports. 90 watt power delivery on those PoE Plus Plus Pluses, and the other ones at 30. Ultimately comes up to this device having an output of 270 watts power delivery. Hence the absolutely enormous power brick there. This is a 350 watt power brick delivering inside this. Now, the PoE Plus ones we've mentioned can be utilised for some of the ancillary edge devices, but PoE Plus Plus Plus, you can power high-end switches, you can power high-end NAS devices. This ends up not just being a central hub in terms of software, but power deployment. And once you really break down into the cost of PoE Plus 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 switches, and indeed PoE Plus routers and network gateways in general, that price tag starts to look less silly at that 579 point for people that are trying to compare this against this. And also, before we move on, it's worth highlighting that alongside this having 9 times the power delivery over PoE, it also arrives with a 75 watt ATX input as well. So remember, and keeping in mind that this is going to be deployed in some pretty niche locations, that is a lovely little extra. Next up, one of the things that was missing from this was Wi-Fi, and I think a lot of users, myself included, just thought, well, if you want Wi-Fi, you buy the Dream 7. Now, this doesn't have that same problem. This arrives with not only that enormous amount of 2.5 gig and 10 gig output of PoE and standard, and indeed copper and fibre, I might add, but on top of that, this does arrive with Wi-Fi 7 as well, arriving with a couple of antennae there to go barreled there onto the top. Across the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz connections, yes, there is a lack of 6 gigahertz, I'm afraid, everyone, but at 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, this has a potential 5 gigabit per second shared network connectivity. And because it's Wi-Fi 7, you've got MLO, multi-link output. So you can aggregate those connections quite substantially. So not only have you got an S-ton of wired connectivity there, but on top of that, you have got Wi-Fi connectivity for the boot. And again, depending on the rather industrial nature of where and when this is deployed, that is going to be invaluable. But it doesn't quite stop there. I'm not going to call this good news, but it's definitely middle news. And that is that this system also has a couple of SIM slots. You see that there? A couple of SIMs. Now, currently, this can only be utilised in conjunction with the 5G outdoor system from UniFi. I really, really hope this gets opened out. I don't have a 5G outdoor here, but it would be nice to have at least more broad support of the slots. Now, UniFi are seemingly expanding and exploring the world of 5G LTE SIM type stuff. I really hope within the software they open it up to allow me to use a third-party SIM inside that as a failover. Whether they do or they don't, I don't know. But at least right now, having 2 SIM card slots in here, currently no support of eSIMs from what I could see, is intriguing. And I hope, without having to utilise that outdoor 5G Max, that it's going to be good to be able to use these in of themselves as not only additional failover, but having 2 of them there for some quite sophisticated and point-to-point access for certain system monitoring. the final core distinction between these two that rolls in with that price tag from what I could see is to do with storage. Remember earlier on when I mentioned about UniFi Protect surveillance software? Well, they both support it, and with this you have got storage included. It rocks out with a 128 gig WD purple SD card for surveillance. That is a surveillance dedicated SD card there in terms of durability, but also prioritizing write over read, because generally you are writing more than you are reading. Now, again, the SD card on its own is certainly not going to be commanding that large $300 price difference, but it's certainly part of it. But it is worth highlighting, and I'll go into more detail on the review, that when it comes to the fiber doesn't include any of that storage, but it does include an M.2 slot there. You still need to buy the adapter separately, which again, I've mentioned before, I find weird, but still, that allows and opens a door for larger storage. Now, not hugely larger storage, I will add that in terms of M.2, you can't use higher than 2 terabytes on this device, and you can get pretty substantial SD cards. So although this does support M.2 there, I don't think in terms of surveillance, you're ever really going to make the most of M.2 NVMe speeds inside this device, enough to make it a wide enough distinction on using an SD card tailored towards surveillance inside this. And again, the SD card is included with this. Realistically, this thing is hench as F, and it is not designed for typical deployments. It is not designed for your niche mini hobbyist home lab. But the weird thing is, I know there are people watching this that are going to buy this for their home lab. Maybe it's because their home lab's in an attic or a garage or a cellar, but also because those extra bells and whistles that 300 nicker price difference includes are going to be viable for many of you. Realistically, this is an XG UniFi switch, the Dream 7 router and the fiber mashed into one device. It's not perfect, it doesn't have the M.2 slot, it doesn't have 6 gigahertz support there. It actually loses a single 10 gig connection compared with this. This has one more 10 gig connection. But in the broader sense, and all the bells and whistles that are included, that price does make sense. As mentioned earlier on, if you compare it against buying these items individually, yes, you could use that bunch you saved to buy a few accessories, and for more non-industrial deployments and more hobbyist deployments and more gradual deployments, that does make a huge amount of sense. But I do think this has an audience, and not just the audience that I believe Ubiquiti think it has. Now, stay tuned for the full review on this device very, very soon. But there are links below in order to get a hold of this right now if you choose to. Using those links will result in a small commission coming here to NAS Compares, allowing me and Eddie to keep doing what we do. I will say, testing so far on this has been very, very positive. The temps, the performance, the access, the general durability and longevity. The issue is, I don't work in the environment that could push this thing to the very extremes it is designed for. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.